And we are off like a dirty shirt. My grandfather always used to say that. All right. Just getting one thing set up here. Okie dokie. Oh, sorry. Hand in front of the camera. Didn't mean to do that. Let's cover up this nasty head of mine. There we go. That's more pleasant. That's more pleasing to the eye. Probably. Okay. Good deal. I think I'm just going to bring this down just a little bit. All right. We're off to the races. So, it's been a crazy, not crazy, it's been a busy last couple of days. Kids have appointments, stuff like that. Got a new monitor set up. So if I'm looking over here, I'm looking at a separate monitor. That's what that is. We're going to be editing again today. So we will jump right into Scrivener here. And we are finishing up some of the last few chapters that need a touch-up before we push out the boxed set of Silence of Oth, Season 1. So I'm not going to... You know what I will do, though? Before I do that, I have something else I need to do. I need to copy in my words from today. I think that's, yep, that should be here. Bam. Yes. Very good. Let's see where we get to. So that was 9:55. Yesterday, I did not get a lot of writing done. But it was an interesting day. This should be... Okay. And... Oh boy, this is going to be a chunk too. Wow. Wow. So I'm about 3,000 words behind. 2,500. Which isn't bad. I did some catching up, I guess, today. And I really needed the time to assess what I was writing. Well, that's right. I did write that other chapter too of In Bad Bishop. I rewrote a chapter. That's where some of those words are coming from. But I needed the time to step back and reassess everything. Because I just hit a wall. I don't like to call it writer's block. I don't like to call it writer's block because I think it's mislabeling the issue. To me, it's more like a spidey sense. Like I can tell something's off and I need to think about it a little bit more, or I need to process it more. I need to do whatever. Okay. Because the fact of the matter is, I've had what people call writer's block before, but there are ways to, you don't push through it exactly. It's not like you push through it. It's more like, you it's just like any other condition. You learn how to treat it, right? And you learn the things that work for you. It's like constipation, right? There's some specific ways to treat that sort of thing and deal with it. It's really not that difficult if you know what you're doing. Same thing with writer's block. For me, I go back to my outline. I revisit my outline. There are some great tools that you can use for this. AI, I know it's a dirty word, but AI tools, I find for me, are actually, I don't use them to write. Like, I don't use ChatGPT to write because it's so incredibly slow. It's actually slow if you're going to edit it. If you're going to write with ChatGPT, I can understand if you've never written anything before and you feel like you're not able to write well enough, I guess. And I can understand how you might feel there. But the fact of the matter is that it's still going to take you so much time to edit the damn thing. And the quality of what you get in the end is really more determined by how you edit it anyway, even when you write it yourself. And so you have to go back and make those changes. You have to go back and fix those things. And when you do that, that's when it gets better. And when we're talking about, oh my gosh, what happened to this thing? Sorry. When we're talking about ChatGPT writing a book for you, what do you wind up with? Maybe I'll do it on stream because I've experimented with it before just to see what it was like. And I've got a story that I wrote with it, and it required so much work. Like, the output wasn't really much faster in terms of, I could write a better quality first draft on my own. And so I would have to come back and I would have to edit and quite a bit. And it was no fun. So I really have no interest in it right now myself. I have no interest in pursuing it other than just for fun. But what I do use ChatGPT for is brainstorming. And oftentimes sort of inverted brainstorming. So I will ask ChatGPT for ideas, and oftentimes the ideas ChatGPT gives me are not what I go with, but it's like, this is a vague silhouette of an idea, and I'm able to, it's almost like when you're looking at shadows as a kid and you see a monster, right? You can make all the lines turn into something else. It's kind of like that. I do the same thing with AI image generation. I don't take those images and use them as dedicated book covers for stuff that I have published. I will use them as like temporary book covers, but really I use AI image generation to get some ideas, to generate some inspiration, to describe a scene to the generator and see what it comes up with, see what that looks like putting the thoughts in my head into pictures, which is actually pretty effective. because I find it very useful for characters. When you're writing a character, it's very hard to keep a clear vision of them sometimes, especially if they're a normal human being. And this might vary from author to author and genre to genre, but I find that writing science fiction, I remember the most basic traits. But if I have like a visual reference, and there's other ways to do this too, you don't have to use AI. But if I had a visual reference for a character, when I have to come back and describe them again, I'm able to do it better. Anyway. Okay, let's get to this.
Gerald woke in a cold sweat, his sheets soaked. It was 0400, another restless night. Though it had been more than a day ago, everything he'd discussed with Evan was swimming through his head. It was all that occupied his thoughts. That and Scylla. He got up and went to the bathroom, washing his face with cold water. He looked at himself in the mirror, dark circles beneath his eyes, his stubble on his chin nearly a beard. In an instant he was back on the bridge, back over Furladen, back in the same terrifying moment he'd relived 100 times. Jer, can you hear me? Gerald punched the mirror with his fist, cracking the glass and cutting his knuckles open. Shit, it was time for the long, embarrassing walk to medical. He clothed himself and wrapped his hand with a towel, taking the quickest route possible, almost forgetting out of habit. What have we got here, Captain? Asked the doctor as Gerald walked right into his office. I just need to know if this needs stitches or not. The doctor glanced over to the corner where Gerald saw Abby. She averted her eyes, but Gerald couldn't look away until the doctor checked his wound, causing him to hiss in pain. It certainly looks garish, but I think stitches would be a little much, he said. You're going to have to let me clean it, though. Sir, go ahead. Abby left the room. Gerald thought to ask the doctor why she was there, knowing that he could supersede the confidentiality privilege if he had to. It was a simple excuse he had used before, explaining that he needed to know if it would have an effect on the officer's duties. But it didn't seem right in this case. There you go, Captain. I wouldn't say as good as new, but give it a week or so and that will turn into a nice scar you can brag about, assuming there's a story to go along with it. Gerald chuckled. I'll have to make that part up. Grief can manifest itself in a lot of ways. Anger is one of them. Perhaps you should spend a little more time in the gym working some of that anger out. Sir, Gerald walked out of the doctor's office. You're the only person on this ship that can give me orders, but I doubt even that will get me in the gym more. As he stepped out of the medical bay and into the hallway, he found Abby standing with her back to the wall. She immediately straightened and faced him. Hey, Gerald rubbed the back of his neck. Hey, how'd you hurt your hand? Gerald shook his head and never answered. They were going to the same deck. They both knew that, and it was no surprise when they entered the lift together. Has Ebener relayed any more information? She asked him. Gerald looked into her green eyes, traced her supple lips. No, nothing. I should have figured it would be a while. Whatever's going on, it probably won't be solved overnight. The lift stopped at their deck and they stepped out. They were going separate ways. Abby smiled shyly. Well, good night. Gerald nodded and walked away, though every bone in his body told him to follow her. He walked away. He entered his room and sat at the edge of his bed, but all the while he wanted to get up and walk to Abby's quarters. There was no way he could sleep like this, but he tried to force himself to. Part of him was appalled at how relieved he was to hear a soft knock at his door. He shot up from his bed and opened it. I'm sorry, Captain, Abby started. Gerald grabbed her and pulled her into his room, shutting the door. He pressed her up against the wall, kissing her neck. He had missed the smell of her, the feel of her skin. It wasn't long before they had gone to the bed and their passion overcame them. It was unusually short-lived. When they'd finished, Gerald waited for the rush of guilt, the pang of his conscience. But there was nothing but peace. Gerald woke with his arms around Abby, her body weight pinning his wounded side, having caused it to go to sleep. Gingerly he maneuvered his arm out from underneath her, being careful for the bandages. He checked the clock. It was 0550. Abby stirred, opening her eyes. Hey, I guess I'm used to you being the one who leaves. She started to sit up. Sorry, no, you don't have to leave. It took putting his arm around her to get her to stay, but after that she smiled. I didn't mean for this to happen, Abby said. I know that it's hard for you right now with Scylla and everything. I didn't think you'd even want to see me. Gerald combed his hand through her red hair. I didn't, but I was an ass. Abby laughed. You still are. Gerald allowed himself to smile for a moment, but it wasn't long before his thoughts turned to accusing him. How can you trust me? He asked. I'm not sure what you mean. I cheated on my wife, someone I loved. How can you trust a person like that? Are you saying you love me? Gerald froze. Abby kissed his nose. I think that I know a part of you that Scylla didn't. Not because she couldn't see it, but because you wouldn't show it to her. That's what lets me trust you. I don't want to hurt you. Abby gently clasped his bandaged hand in hers. I think you're more of a danger to yourself. Honestly, they both laughed. And when they were done, Gerald remembered seeing her there in the doctor's office. Why were you in medical? Abby's gaze went blank. She hesitated to respond. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed throughout the room. A feeling of deja vu twisted Gerald's gut into knots.
You know, sometimes you read something that you wrote and you're not entirely impressed. This is one of those times. I almost wonder if this would be better as a rewrite than as an edit. Darn it. I did not want to find myself in this situation right now. Okay, let's do this one, and then I'll see how I feel about it. Oh man.
Gerald and Abby stepped onto the bridge together. He could feel the eyes of the crew on them, but he didn't care anymore. It was a sense of freedom he hadn't felt in. He couldn't remember how long. Gerald went to the master tabla base and Abby to the upper deck. Commander Growl was waiting there for him. Sit rep. Commander. Distress beacon from Defiant. Jadarna system. Graghan. We need to jump now, sir. Gerald nodded. Punch it. They jumped. Immediately upon arriving, the Intrepid was buffeted by a barrage of small debris that appeared as motes of dust on the tabla base. What is that, Commander? Gerald asked, looking up at him with a raised brow. After a moment, Graal's gaze became grim. It looks like that's Defiant, sir. That's what I was thinking, too. Abby called out from the upper deck. Their distress beacon indicated 3 Graghan destroyers. Sir, they would have just jumped away, unless we hear from them. I'm assuming they're lost. No way of telling where the Graghan went. Growl mumbled. I know damn well where they went. We're only in the outer reaches of this system. Commander, Jadarna is in the core and our people are there. That's where the Graghan would go. Gerald made several quick extrapolations on the tabla base. Send a beacon to Vigilant, then Steadfast relaying the message. They should be close enough to assist. An attack on a Saren colony deserves a proper response. He looked up at Growl. Is our backup drive charged? Commander, yes, sir, but this is exactly the situation we need it for. I want us in high orbit over the colony side of the planet. All wings ready to fly. Aye, sir. The second jump came a moment later, Jadarna appearing on the tabla base before him. The 3 Graghan destroyers were in a predictable formation over the largest colony on the planet, bombs dropping. Defiant was there, too. They were damaged, but still making an attack run on the destroyers. Tell Defiant to back off, Gerald ordered. We might need their help soon, but they have to survive if that's going to happen. Growl picked up the comm and made the call. After a moment he held the receiver to his ear. Colonel Redder is refusing to disengage. Sir, that's her choice. Then, Gerald shrugged. Launch wings 1 through 3 at the closest destroyer. Auxiliary wings engage the distant 2. I want nukes ready to fire on my command. The crew went to work. Gerald drew the lines for the fighter wings as they were launching. There was a moment before the destroyers took notice of them, which gave him time to consult the master tabla base, and she had her own thoughts on the impending battle. The extensive catalog of potential maneuvers the Graghan could employ appeared on screen, and Gerald shuffled through them until he found the most predictable match. Now they had to massage them into position, see how they would respond, and get them where they wanted them. Destroyers are launching drones, sir, Growl said. It's not the usual number. Looks like they took some heavy losses against Defiant. For a night class, that was impressive. Colonel Redder had a reputation for being a sharp tactician, though Gerald had never gotten to see it in person like this. But those drones were just computers. It was the crew of the Defiant and the citizens of Jadarna that are taking actual losses. We have nukes ready to fire with good angles on all of them, sir, Abby called out. Fire them at the nearest destroyer, and advise the fighter wings to maintain safe distance. The nukes launched. Fighters and drones swarmed the center of the Tadla base. The first destroyer went down after the successive blasts, and now it was time to test Gerald's theory. The remaining destroyers disengaged from the planet, turning their focus toward Intrepid. Wait a minute, Gerald muttered. He checked the master Tadla base. Something's not right. What are they doing? Growl saw his uncertainty. The Tadla base isn't all-knowing, Captain. No, but the Graken are more predictable than this. This isn't their strategy. It looks to me like they're diving headlong into a direct attack. Growl shrugged. Should be an easy take, but that's not what they do. There's either something we're not seeing or another green blip appeared on the Tadla base. A big one. Graken Dominator has just jumped into our space, Captain, Abby announced. It's opening fire. Missiles fired from the Dominator in all directions, most striking the fighter wings, taking a handful of fighters out. 12 nukes were on the table, but they weren't all pointed at Intrepid. The master Tadla base blinked frantically, confused. Gerald felt the same way. Gerald looked up at Commander Grell. It's firing on the destroyers, too.
Okay. Much better here. This chapter is the end of the book. Whoa, my light went off. There we go. This is the end of the book. So it's meant to be sort of a cliffhanger here. Let's see what we got. Yeah, I know this is a long time. I don't need to all this nonsense. What? There's a second comment here. Where is it? There it is. So this is weird. There we go. That resolves that. Now it's just this. Now it's just this, and I don't know how to feel about this. Yeah. So let's start with the easy stuff. 0, 400. What are we doing here? Oh boy. Yeah, this part doesn't sit well with me. Doesn't sit well with me. His character is unfortunately unlikable. This chapter is very rushed. I don't know, in light of everything else, does this burst of anger doesn't seem to make any sense. Yeah, I think we've got to delete that. And now I have to write something else in there. I have to put something else there now. What am I going to put there? What am I going to put there? So I think what we're going to have, whoops. He is going to unable to sleep. Looks for meds. No meds. Go to medical. That, I think, is what's going to happen there. That, I think, is what we're going to go with. Let me clean up the rest of this. And this is the transition scene. Whoa, man. But, oh, I hate how it does that. So this is going to need to change. I think we'll just say Abby walks out as he walks in. We'll simplify that. Doc comes out to see him, gives him pills. Very simple. We're going to keep it simple. Yeah, I don't like this either. All of this, just right here, all of that can go. And that's a lot. Yeah. I just think, unfortunately, this needs to be scrapped. Now I'm kicking myself because this is so he gets the pills, leaves, talks to Abby on way back, and then the same scene as before is fine. What do I have? Do I have a strike through? Oh, shoot. Probably text. Oh, wonderful. There we go. Oh, that's that. There we go. Yeah, this is just too. Put brackets around that because that's not a great phrase, but it's what happens. I'm not British. This is very, very aggressive. This is a little aggressive here. We need transition. Dialogue, probably. Yeah, this is kind of like meh. Jeez. Doesn't add anything. This is why I'm saying it might be better to just rewrite this. Might just be better to rewrite it. Okay. All this is getting cut. That's the majority of it. Well, not the majority. That's a good chunk. Frick. Yep. Okay, great. It's going to need a rewrite. I've decided. Yay. Which I will not be doing on stream. I'm not going to rewrite this on stream. It's going to get rewritten in the morning. That's what's going to happen. And then I'm going to pull the trigger. Okay. Shoot. Well, could have been worse. So, what to do now? You know, we've got some time. I haven't been on here for very long. So let's play around with this guy right here. Way to start a book there, right? I sometimes like to put things like this right at the beginning of a book because it communicates to people very clearly. This is what the book is about. Do not be mistaken, right? This is stuff that's in the book. So don't be surprised. This here is a new series. Jotnar is the title of the working title of that series. Probably going to be something slightly different once it's finalized. But the series is a combination of sort of space marine, post-apocalyptic, and alien invasion, all rolled into one.
Don't jump yet, Kane. Don't fucking jump. Alex had always been told as a child he was no good at listening. That's what eventually landed him in military prep school by the age of 10. He grabbed the handle on the inner door of the chopper with his heavily gloved hand. A quick pull and the lock released, the door sliding open with a violent bang. He likes military school. In fact, he liked it so much he decided to join up with the Space Corps.
Oops. I needed to switch this. All here. To red. That's going to maybe look a little weird. I don't know. Because then I come in here with blue, light. And that's how I know what I fixed.
He liked military school. In fact, he liked it so much he decided to join up with the Space Corps and enlist in the Marines. What a fucking good idea that was. Steady now, Alex, Blackwood said. He was sitting there on the bench CH seat opposite the open hatch as calm as ever, staring Alex down from under his black hood. Alex could see the whites of his eyes through his black sunglasses with the help of his helmet's hood. The pilot was still furious with him, though, screaming at the top of his lungs. I'm gonna touch down. What the hell are you doing? I said don't jump. Blackwood nodded to him. You do what you gotta do. Alex didn't need to hear it twice. He grabbed hold of both sides of the hatch and threw himself out of the chopper. It was a long way down to streets below. Alex didn't have a chute. Didn't need one. That's what Blackwood had told him. Anyway, that suit is indestructible. Alex recalled him saying, I could drop you from orbit in that thing and you wouldn't feel so much as a bomb. It was time to put that to the test. The city below was a hellscape, ravaged by the Kraken. Those alien motherfuckers has been around for a while now, about 3 decades, before Alex was even a swimmer in his daddy's nuts. But one day, those one-eyed bastards from hell decided they'd start blowing everything up. A proper invasion took place, fucking up life for everyone on Saren and every other planet in the Glom. They fucked Alex up good, too. He sped past several tall buildings, looking down his black body armor past the toes of his boots. If he changed his position, he could just ever so slightly change the angle of his trajectory as he fell at terminal velocity. Don't land on your knee, he remembered Blackwood saying. For off's sake, make sure you land on both feet. The armor system was designed for you to land on both feet. The pavement crunched under his feet like crisp leaves in the fall. The thought reminded him of his mom's pie she'd make every year for the holidays. Reminded him of his whole damn family. The Kraken killed every last one of them. Blackwood was in his ear the moment he touched down. What did I tell you? Like jumping on a mattress. Alex straightened from his hunched-over position after landing on both feet. There was a small crater under him. The ruined city name, has a new pothole, courtesy of Alex Kane. But there was no construction crew to repair it, or the rest of the dilapidated city around him. Keep your eyes peeled. Your target is down High Street. They've got a big-ass ziggurat down there, so don't go making too much noise or we're going to have a hell of a time pulling you out. Kane, copy. He was surrounded by wrecked buildings and abandoned cars. Trash littered the streets, blown about by the wind from every corner of the city. Down the street to his right was a downed skyscraper, like a felled tree, still intact in parts, but mostly demolished to hell. Through the red glow of his visor he could scan every floor of that building, check for signs of life, hostels, even resources if the need arose. He wasn't here for any of that, though. His rifle was on his back, mounted between his shoulder blades. Alex had never been one to get obsessive over guns. Blackwood had told him the names of all the weapons once, and he didn't remember them. The caliber, the make and model, the weapons service history, none of that really mattered. It just needed to shoot lead. And when you were fighting the Kraken, it needed to shoot a lot of it. Alex proceeded cautiously down the street in the general direction of the ziggurat. He couldn't quite see it yet, the buildings around him blocking the view, but he could sense it. The Kraken didn't just duck him up physically, they fucked with his head, too. And those fucking black pyramids they set up were where they carried out their experiments. It was straight out of a horror movie, and he'd never been much of a fan of those. You have movement closing in on you. Check your HUD, Blackwood said, in his ear again. I can see my HUD. You know, I'm not blind. Don't blink. Then, you've got two, maybe three stalkers approaching you from the southeast. Alex would turn the comm off if he could. The next time they upgraded the armor system they needed to install an off switch. It was hard enough to go solo in the middle of an apocalyptic war zone without Blackwood chirping at him every other minute. The street ahead was littered with vehicles, some stacked up and made into piles. It was a maze to get through on foot, or it would have been for the average human. If he wanted to, he could climb up on top of one of those vehicles and hop from car to car like a kid on a playground. But he didn't need to go attracting that much attention to himself. Most everything in the city was the way humanity had left it the day the Kraken had decided to come and pay them a visit. No one had thought they'd be back after the war ended 30 years ago. Victory was assumed, and the Kraken remained a distant annoyance, something they heard about on the news from time to time. But no one expected the Kraken at their front door. Alex hugged the buildings on the right side of the street. Doors and windows were broken or ripped out entirely. Inside it would have looked like complete darkness if not for his HUD illuminating everything for him. There was nothing to be afraid of in those empty buildings, except for the ghosts maybe. The dead were what scared him now, more than he'd ever been afraid of the living. There was movement up ahead of him, on the other end of a makeshift tunnel that was built out of stacked up vehicles. He could hear them, the stalkers, watching him from their hiding places. There were more of them than Blackwood had suggested, at least 5, maybe 6. Come on, come out and play, he said. I don't bite. I promise. He held his rifle at the ready as he passed through that makeshift tunnel. With every step he was aware of them shifting around him, closing in for the attack. This would be a virgin battle for the both of them. Alex had yet to test his new armor outside of training, and they hadn't seen anything like him before, at least if Blackwood was to be believed. And so, when one of the stalkers came up behind him, thinking they had caught him flat-footed, Alex knew exactly where they were. His body snapped around in a flash. No hesitation, pure instinct. His left hooked into the karambit, sheathed on his chest plate, spinning it around his forefinger. The blade found the stalker's throat. Blood splashed on his visor. Another 2 were behind him. He adjusted his stance, keeping his feet moving as he aimed down his rifle's sight at them. Rockada, rockada, rockada. They went down one after the other. Headshots only, the way he was trained. To be fair, the armor system made it infinitely easier. Alex came out of the tunnel finding himself in an open intersection. The tunnel collapsed behind him, which couldn't have been an accident. Even in that moment he had the presence of mind to know that he was trapped. Every outlet of the intersection was blocked off.
This is a good place. Whoa. Okay.
Alex came out of the tunnel, finding himself in an open intersection. The tunnel collapsed behind him, which couldn't have been an accident. Even in that moment, he had the presence of mind to know that he was trapped. Every outlet of the intersection was blocked off. They'd prepared an arena for him. Fuck. A green bolt struck the cement at his feet, exploding with a blast of fire and rubble that bounced off his energy shield. The shit had come from a rooftop kitty corner from where he was standing. Take cover, Blackwood shouted in his ear. That suit is worth more than my pension, and I have a feeling the Kraken won't give it back if you get killed. Alex scrambled to get behind the cover of a nearby vehicle. There were two of them raining down bolts on him. The second one had a better angle on him from where he was huddled up presently, blasting a volley of bolts at him that struck the vehicle at his back and the brick wall opposite him. He waited, patiently. A coiled spring. The moment had to present itself. Eyes up, on his feet, hips on a swivel. Two trigger pulls. Reposition. Two more. The stalkers fell from their respect.
This is better with staccato. It looks annoying, but it's... So this way, as you read this, it's like one thing after... It's one thing, right? Eyes up, on his feet, hips on a swivel. All of those small sentences come together to illustrate what's happening in a much better way than saying, he lifted his eyes, rising to his feet, his hips on a swivel as he pulled the trigger twice. Like, all those extra words don't need to be there. Like, the words should match the pace of the action. You know.
The stalkers fell from their respective rooftops. Efficient, Blackwood remarked, though he didn't sound impressed. You have one more hiding somewhere. Blackwood was off in his calculations, though. He was still up in the air in that chopper, and he could see things by the right angle. 2 feet slammed into the middle of Alex's back, giving him enough momentum to stagger forward a step. A black hand reached around and wove its way in between him and his rifle. He tried to pull it in close, but that only helped his assailant. The rifle twirled end over end, falling out of his hands, rattling on the cement. What have they done to you, brother? A raspy voice asked. Alex got his hands up, made distance between him and the stalker. He looked him up and down, his blade ready in his hand. The human appearance of his attacker was but a silhouette, an after-image of what the Kraken had corrupted and twisted to suit their purposes. Bony, black chitin covered the stalker's body from head to toe. His face was covered by a living mask of organic armor, slick and featureless, emanating a green aura from beneath the black layers of the exoskeleton. The Kraken called them chosen. Did you let them do this to you? Asked the stalker in front of him. He sounded sympathetic, but it was just a ruse. Or did they take you from us? I know you were once like me. I know you were chosen before they turned you into this abomination. The gifts granted to you by the Exarch and the Praetors cannot be rescinded. Alex regrouped the handle of his blade. Then they should have thought about that before they chose a motherfucker like me.
Okay. Some good things here to look at. Yep. That is how it's spelled, right? It's with a K. Yeah. Okay. Good deal. Good deal. There's chapter 1. Chapter 2. So the narrative kind of goes back and forth here. We just jumped into the action, and now we're going to actually do a little flashback.
He woke up with a splitting headache. The pain was some of the worst he'd ever felt, at least the worst since he'd endured what the Kraken had done to him. The Kraken. He looked around at his surroundings. Flat on his back, strapped down on a table, and surrounded by 4 cold iron walls. That's where he found himself. This wasn't the ziggurat. That's where they kept them, him and the others, the chosen. The change of scenery was unsettling, a deep fear running through his veins, ice cold. The horrors of the ziggurat were burned into his mind, but if he didn't come back he knew they would come for him, and his master would not be pleased. He thrashed for a long time, but it seemed futile. The straps that held him down only seemed to get tighter as he struggled. Each limb was isolated, his head, too, and heavy straps across his torso were positioned in such a way that he couldn't move at all. Footsteps, keys jingling, a lock turn followed by the sound of a latch opening. A door opened on one of the walls, its hinges yawning and groaning as they slowly swung open. He's awake. Good. That means it took this time. I'm not letting you in there with him alone, another voice said, commanding. It was a tone he was familiar with, even though he didn't know the speaker. That was the voice of a military man, probably a commanding officer. I'll be fine, Commander. He can't harm me. Have a little faith. There was sighing and a tense silence before one of the men entered the room, so him and the door was shut. The latch and the lock were put back as they were. They weren't going to let him out anytime soon. The man's face was hidden behind a black hood, made of plain cloth. He wore a black trench coat over the top of the hoodie, a military coat, but with no insignia present. Not even the red 3-pointed star of Sarin was there. Alexander Joseph Kane, the man said. He dropped a stack of manila file folders down on a bench seat, then sat down beside them. I've learned a lot about you in the last 72 hours. Everything that I could dig up from your records in the Space Corps and the Marines. Alex. That was his name. He'd forgotten it. Like he'd dreamt a long dream and just now returned to his own body. My name is, well, you can call me Agent Blackwood. Let's keep it at that for now. I may know more about you than your own mother, but I still don't know you that well. He picked up one of the file folders and started sifting through pages. Your service record is impressive, and that's an understatement. You served the Space Corps well, son. Though, there is that one incident we'll need to talk about. You had a spotless record up until the end there, but I suppose the apocalypse counts for extenuating circumstances, right? Seems fair to me anyway. Alex tried to speak, but his jaw was locked. All he could muster was a muffled grunt, spewing spit out from between his lips. Ah, that would be the tranquilizers we have you. Don't worry, they'll wear off. We had to take precautions. You know, this isn't my first rodeo, Alexander. Or do you prefer Alex? Let's go with that. Better to ask forgiveness than permission, right? Alex looked down at his hand, clenching it into a weak fist. Maybe that was why the straps felt so immovable. They drugged him up to Kingdom Come. I've had the distinct privilege of trying to tame a handful of your colleagues. I hope you don't mind my phrasing there, but I think it's accurate. Are you aware of what they did to you? The Kraken? Can you remember? Alex closed his eyes. He remembered being captured. The holding pod, the instruments they used to cut at his flesh, the implants, the chitin they seeded into his skin. Yes. Blackwood nodded from behind his hood, his face still obscured. So then you know what you've become. I have a lot more questions on that for you, but I'm going to spare them for now. Blackwood stood up and walked over to Alex where he was strapped down on that table, like a figure in a child's nightmare. He loomed over him. I don't blame you. You only did what they made you do. I suppose that you probably have memories of what you did. Maybe not that you can summon up right now, but buried deep in there. He tapped Alex's forehead. That's my theory. Anyway, they had control of you. Completely. Am I right? I've never gotten a straight answer from any other stalkers before. Chosen. Come again. They call us Chosen. Blackwood nodded slowly, the faintest smirk visible through the shadows under his hood. I see. A fitting name, I suppose. Most humans got tossed to the side, eaten, ripped apart, murdered. But they chose you, I guess. Makes sense. Alex felt just as powerless.
Okay.
Alex felt just as powerless under Blackwood's gaze as he did with the Kraken. A part of him was screaming to be let out, to be given the chance to escape and flee back to, Ziggurat. Don't worry, Alex. We're far, far away from the nearest pyramid of death those bastards brought with them. We scooped you up and brought you here to Bastion Alpha. I'm not gonna tell you where that is, but trust me when I say it's somewhere the Kraken have no interest in whatsoever. They've already covered this area and as far as they know nobody's home. For the most let. They're right. But some of us managed to survive, Alex. A lot more than you might think. And not just here on Saren, but on other planets in the Glom, too. Jadarna, Rudana, even some of the others way out there in the other sectors. From what I've been told. That's great. Blackwood laughed. I know, I can be a windbag at times. Forgive me. Alex glared up at him, squinting through the light that was beaming straight into his eyes. Why? Why? You're the first one to ask me that, Alex. That's a good sign. A real good sign. Blackwood sighed. I've got plans for you, son. You see, it's not every day you're able to get your hands in a genetically modified superhuman. Even past attempts the Space Course has made at human enhancement pale in comparison to what the Kraken did with you and the rest of the Chosen. So, what? So? Well, now that I've got you here and that cocktail of drugs is in you, I'm guessing you're thinking a little more clearly than you were before. Am I right? Alex nodded as best he could with the straps on his forehead and chin. You know, I'm a strategic sort of guy. I don't usually like to be swept away by emotion. But sometimes revenge is the medicine the doctor ordered. Blackwood lifted his head, allowing the light from above to illuminate his face. His dimpled chin was covered in 2-day-old stubble, and black sunglasses rested on the rigid bridge of his nose. Do you have a desire for revenge, Alex? I'm hoping you do. Alex grit his teeth. The memories were flooding back to him now, and they hurt. They hurt so bad. Tell me, Alex. Tell me what they did to you. Blackwood pursed his lips, like he was on the verge of tears, though none appeared. Tell me everything and I can give you the power to take revenge.
Okay, pretty clean here so far. There we go. That's better. He's not that unkept. So, surroundings. Surrounded by. He looked around at the room. His surroundings. See, this is why it would sometimes be great to have a chat. And then chat, I could be like, chat, hey, what should I change this word out for? Chat, tell me what this word should be. Chat. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. You know what? Actually, this. Four core. There we go. Where's this comment? So the hymn. So the hymn. What is this supposed to be? I don't even know. So the hymn. One of the men entered the room and the door was shut. That makes sense. So I'm not going to question it. Cool. All right. So the hymn. All right. I think, boys and girls, we are going to call it there for now. That was about an hour. Could be longer. Really could be. Probably do need to go longer. But I'm tired. So I will be signing off here. Sayonara, my friends.